Well, listening, Nick Thorpe, Head of Archaeology at the University of Winchester. Hello, Nick.
Hello there.
Is your trowel thumb twitching listening to that?
It is indeed, yes.
Good. And Gillian Hovell, Hovell, is author and archaeologist and is also known as... Gillian, what's your nickname?
The Muddy Archaeologist.
The Muddy Archaeologist. These are great salad days for archaeologists. Do you want to start by slapping your colleagues in Leicester on the back with a muddy hand, Gillian?
Oh, definitely. A little bit of envy. We don't all find kings under car parks, and usually it's a bit of pot and a bit of something else, but it's all a piece of history. So it's fantastic because it's just created Richard III fever.
Do you agree with Scarlett there, saying that if, in a certain way, a bit of pot can be a king?
Oh, gosh, yes. I mean, it's when you look at, say, let's go look at the Staffordshire hoard, you know, that great gold stuff, and everybody's saying it's treasure and it's fantastic, but its real treasure is what it tells us about the history. It changed the way we saw things, and perhaps Richard III will change the way we see himself. But a piece of pot can tell us that somebody of a certain era was in that area or whatever.
Nick, is at the heart of it. You archaeologists see yourself as the senior service, and all those hapless historians come along and give their human interpretation. But you deal in something rather more what we call meat and potatoes.
Well, I mean, often we're looking at the everyday part of ancient life, and therefore we are, as and it said in the earlier interview, filling in the gaps. I mean, it's like an ongoing, never-ending detective story, really, archaeology.
What of the pressure on funding? We're in a triple dip risk to our economy. It's austerity Britain. The dig I just visited was funded thanks to the planning rules. If you're going to put up a new building in a car park, you have to help fund the digging. But I believe that because of what's happened in the economy, Nick, we have lost jobs in archaeology.
Yes, that's certainly been true. I mean, the jobs which depend on funding from developers will go up and down depending on the state of the economy generally.
But I told you there that, in fact, Tim Longman and his team are hiring. Do we think, post-Richard III, you know, the second life he's had, that we'll see more collaboration, Gillian, between say, amateur archaeologists and professional teams?
Oh, definitely. There's a thing called community archaeology. So although you have your professional groups, you also have groups of amateurs who are steered by professionals, and it's very much the way forward when you haven't got a great deal of money, because you might get a Heritage Lottery Fund grant, and that will enable all sorts of people from all sorts of professions and all sorts of interests to come in and not just have a go, but to really make a difference. What they find can change the way that we see things.
And that's certainly what's to hope for in this discovery. Nick, what are you digging at the moment?
Well, our main major project in Winchester is the excavation of a medieval leper hospital, which we're doing as a student project, but also with local volunteers as well. And the idea of that is to try to get an idea by looking at the skeletons, the buildings, the rubbish pits, and all the relevant evidence from the site of how it was actually like to be a leper in medieval England.
And, you know, that entered the language. Was there evidence that other pariahs were treated as lepers even if they did not have the disease?
Well, it seems quite clear that there was a lot of false diagnosis at the time, and unfortunately it was a one-way ticket. Once you went into the leper hospital, that was it, you were there for life. So there undoubtedly were some unfortunate people who were stuck even though they didn't need to be. But I mean, as far as we can see, many of the people there were fairly well treated. They had a good diet, they had access to imported goods and so on, and they were well treated in death as well, buried in a proper, respectful manner. One of the burials we found, indeed, was of a pilgrim, somebody who'd been all the way to Santiago de Compostela in Spain, so must have been a wealthy and important individual, but came back and ended up being buried in our leper hospital.
You see, Gillian, as a layman, I listened to that and I think that conflicts with what I thought of medieval England in this case, that there was compassion to social outcasts at this time. Does it surprise you as a fellow expert of Nick's?
No, it doesn't surprise me at all. History's often simplified, and it's often far, far more complex, and people are more complex, and that's what we're digging about. We're digging about people and their lives, how they lived, how people interacted with each other. It is far, far more complex, and yet often much more human, really.
But then, you know, we're all knocking historians. If I got three archaeologists in a trench and said, what does this mean, would you
You'd
all
have
be...
6 opinions, basically.
So you're just as bad, are you? Kind of, it's not clear really what...
No, it's not. There's loads of science which can give us facts and dates, but even the carbon dating will give you 3 options, and you have to choose which one is the most appropriate or the most likely. So it's all about using your interpretation skills, your imagination, dare I say it, to a certain extent, and putting the facts together and working out which is the best working theory.
OK, well, I'll give you a fantasy dig anywhere in the UK. Nick, you go first, and then to you, Gillian.
OK.
What do you think is out there that should be found?
Well, I think one of the most extraordinary areas in terms of British archaeology is the Orkney Islands, where I was been lucky enough to work in the past. And the remarkable thing there is you have extremely good survival of houses, so getting a really good idea of how people lived their lives as old as something like 3,500 BC, all the way up to the medieval period. So I'd love to work there again, certainly.
Gillian?
Yes, well, I'm a classical historian, so anything that's Roman, but I'm going to put myself on a limb and say that the most important archaeology is the stuff that makes people in the streets see their own community differently. Okay. So stuff that's down at the end of the road and they go, gosh, I'd never thought that I'm walking in the same space as the ancestors.
That's like my Bristol car park that I was in.
Well, exactly.
Now, as a special treat for you, we would normally say goodbye to you here, but we have tried to imagine how Richard III would sound. Would you like to join us listening to that?
Most certainly.
Right, that's good. It's the right answer, Gillian. Nick, are you pushing off, or will you stay?
I'm keen to hear.
Well, based on the written clues, the University of Leicester's deduced he had the accent of the West Midlands, so BH is the only news programme to have turned to Noddy Holder, Slade frontman and proud son of Walsall.
Sir, I say, I pray you that ye fail me not at this time in my great need, as ye will that I show you my good lordship in that matter that ye labour to me for.
Gillian, again, I'm looking for the right answer here. Do you want to hear more?
Oh, yes, definitely.
Because that was a note written in his own hand. But, Nick, I know you'll be more familiar with him from Shakespeare's pen. Noddy?
Now is the winter of our discontent made glorious summer by this son of York, and all the clouds that lord upon our house in the deep bosom of the ocean bedded, now are the brows bound with victorious wreaths.
Well, what a way to go. It is. You started with happiness and we'll end with your giggling, both of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Gillian Hovell there and Nick Thorpe, live archaeologists, and thanks to Noddy Holder.